Hey everybody, welcome back to the Rotoballer YouTube channel and the WPC Plus. I'm Pierre. With me is Nick, and we're going to talk fantasy baseball, of course. This time, we're going to look at starting pitchers and dive into some individual pitches and their run values to see who's up and who's down early in the season. Nick, it's still early, right? We're going to keep saying that because it is, but I don't think it's too early to look at some individual pitch values to see really who's making some progress over the last season and maybe who's hurting because it doesn't take very long for a pitcher to wreck your ratios and sink you to the bottom of the standings as I well know in a couple of leagues.
Yeah, I'm with you. They can wreck early ratios just in a hurry, and yeah, it's early, but with you know, I think there's a lot more to be learned from early pitching numbers as far as not just performance, but how a pitch looks, how it's if it's not just the if it's performing worse and if it has we'll talk about some pitches that have vastly different run values against it to the good and bad than they've had before. But not just performance difference, but how the pitch is moving. Is velocity the same? Is movement on either plane the same? It's all tied together. And with pitching, we can kind of get you know uh there can be adjustments to be made, but we can look at a picture and see that, okay, these it is getting drastically different results and might be being thrown differently. It's why. And that's kind of the early question, the early, it's there's things to be learned early in the season. It's just going to open up more questions, but at least it kind of gives us somewhere to start on where to evaluate the pitchers we drafted.
Yeah, because it is so early, you can't just look at a guy's ERA and make a judgment. You have to really dig into each game, and we're gonna dig really as deep as you can get into the individual pitch because last time we did talk about velocity and see maybe who's up and down. That's kind of an early indicator. After the first 2 weeks of play, you don't want to take too much at all away. But if you do look at a guy's velocity is down, that could be a red flag. And of course, if it's up, that's a good thing. So now let's look at some pitches that just either are not doing the job for some guys that you might have heard in the news because they are fantasy risers and fallers. Let's start with our three up. And the first guy I want to talk about is somebody who was not on the radar at all. And I think we can understand why. Anthony Desclafani, who easy to say, hard to spell. With the Reds, looked promising. And then last year, just the wheels fell off. He had an xERA of 653, and so he wasn't on any draft boards anywhere. An xWOBA of 380. So went to San Francisco, and now it's just been pretty dominant so far. In 4 starts, a 214 ERA, 119 WHIP, about a strikeout per inning in 21 innings. So what is it that has made the difference for him so far?
Yeah, he is. You're right. Definitely was not on a lot of radars coming in, but it helps that you know, we're used to seeing him at one of the worst pitching ballparks there is in Cincinnati, and now he moves to San Francisco, and I think one out of his 3 starts have been at home so far, but that helps. But the pitch we're going to talk about, the his sinker that he throws about 23% of the time this year. He threw it 23% of the time last year. It was a not a great pitch for him last year. We're going to be talking about run values on individual pitches, and that is just a simple, every event that can happen on a pitch is given a run value, and you add up all those events and you get a total amount of runs that pitch has been worth. So if a negative number is good, positive number is bad. So on DeSclafani's last year, his sinker had a 3.7 run value per 100 pitches, mind you, not total. And so bad. The worst pitches, we'll talk about some bigger numbers here early, but usually by the time things shake out at the end of the year, like the worst pitches are going to be like it's a 6 to -6 usually kind of range. There will be outliers outside of that, but -5, -6, very or +5, +6, very bad for pitches. And DeSclafani's sinker last year was 3.7, so not very good. And comes back this year so far, it's at -11.3 runs per 100 pitches. Now, obviously, small sample, like I said, -6 is usually like besides outliers, that's around where the best pitches are going to be. So that just goes to tell you like how good that pitch has been for him this year. And it's definitely not a swing and miss pitch. Only 21% or really getting strikes at all is 21% CSW this year, is 19% last year. At his swinging strike 4.8%. It's a sinker. He's not trying to strike people out, but he is getting batters to make a lot of poor contact, and through 3 starts, he's allowed 2 runs. So it's obviously working, and has earned has gotten a lot of fantasy managers some early cheap returns.
Yeah, and the sinker typically not a strikeout pitch. It's usually, guys who are going to induce ground balls and, pitch to contact. And that might work because the Giants looking like they've put together a pretty solid defense on the infield. And like you said, the favorable home park, that definitely helps. Do you think there's enough strikeout upside with his other pitches that he can be viable the rest of the way?
Yeah, I do. He's always been like the he was so up and down. Like he was such a hard. I wrote him up a lot for Rotoballer on a lot the past couple of years on the weekly streamers and waiver wire pickups, and he's always just been, because he can strike some people out in a game, and then he'll have 8 strikeouts in his 6 innings, and then the next game it'll be 2 strikeouts in 5 innings. So it's hard to get a handle of. Like I think he does. I think he's not. I think if you have him right now, you should hold him. He's a little more than a streamer, just because the results have been so good that you kind of just have to. You don't want to throw him back on the wire, and then he does the same thing in the next 3 starts he's done in his first 3 starts. So yeah, I think he's got enough to like hang on to right now. And if the sinker continues to, he throws it a quarter of the time. If it's continuing to get him, a little deeper into games, which deep for DeSclafani is kind of relative. But if it gets him consistently in this, 5-6 innings, he's actually eligible for some wins. Yeah, I think he's good enough to hold on to right now.
Yeah, that's the thing, is the consistency, right? We need to see it over a larger sample, but yeah, definitely a guy worth holding. It looks like. Also, you might want to consider holding Joe Musgrove. He's doing pretty good so far. He did that no hit thing right a couple of weeks ago, and aside from that, he's pretty much been one of the best fantasy starting pitchers outside of DeGrom. So here's the thing. Besides the fact that now he's an ex-pirate, which of course that's automatic boost right there.
Always helps.
I mean that's right there. It's the post-pirate bump. Sorry, our resident pirate fans here, but the slider has been incredible. Now he's a guy who doesn't rely on one pitch. He's got a 5-pitch mix. The slider is his most thrown pitch, but only at 27%. So we're talking quarter of a time. But it has been so effective that, I mean, that's a large reason that he's been able to do what he's done so far. What is it besides just being out of Pittsburgh that's helped Musgrove so much? Because he's been kind of like a fantasy analyst sleeper, post-hype sleeper for a while. And now it's just all coming together. I mean, is it as simple as just change of scenery?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like you want to blame it all on the pirate stink, but it's you can't blame it all. It's one of those things where we've kind of known just how good a couple of his pitches were for a while. And he was a before he went to before the trade to San Diego, he was the popular sleeper pick of like, okay, Joe Musgrove is he's going to unlock it this year. Cause I mean, he unlocked it last year. He had a 33% strikeout rate in 40 innings. And that's up from his previous high was 21.9%. Like, it wasn't just a small strikeout boost, it was a large strikeout boost last year. So going, when you already have that and you're like, there's already hype for him when he is a Pirate, and then he gets traded to a real team, and and kept like all the nastiness that he unlocked in 2020. He's got a 39% strikeout rate. Yeah, almost a 40% strikeout rate this year. It'll come down, but it was 33% last year. So it's like you can give him that talent bump now, and just the movement is so ridiculous on all of his pitches. Like, we'll talk about this. We talk about the slider, and the numbers are kind of insane. He has a 34.3% swinging strike rate on his slider right now. It was 24% last year, and that's what got everyone excited. And now it's 10 points higher than it was last year. 53.5% CSW. It is no one can even touch it. Looking at like the movement profile, his slider is the horizontal. Like, I think we've seen the highlights now, or the pitching ninja gifts. The slider has some extreme wiggle. It's got 9.3 inches more horizontal movement than average. It's got 172% more tail action on it. It is impossible to hit. And it's not just a slider. It's like you go to his Baseball Savant page and go to the movement. It's just like curveball, changeup, both planes, tons of movement. So it's like I think it's I the change of scenery, yes, but it's just this is a continuation of what we saw last year, and there's no real reason to think that it's coming back, or going back to 21% K rate Joe Musgrove.
Yeah, we to some extent we say we could have seen this coming, and he was getting a little buzz even before last year when he was still in Pittsburgh, and he didn't, yeah, sort of break out. I mean, the strikeout rate jumped like you said, but still, we didn't see anything else really, make him too fantasy relevant other than just kind of a mid tier arm. But yeah, that one thing that sticks out to me is the chase rate, 98th percentile, and of course the horizontal movement on the slider is a large reason for that. So I mean, yeah, you have to think that he's going to keep it rolling. Maybe not quite to the extent he has now, but yeah, you have to feel pretty good about what he's done. And you should also feel pretty good about Julio Urias. Now, he's someone who we've known about for years, hyped prospect, and kind of really solidified his role last year. He's been really good so far. That's not too shocking. But he has made some improvements, believe it or not. And especially, we're going to look at the changeup. Do you think that he maybe takes another step forward? Because at this point, he's actually striking out more guys than Walker Buehler, which is something I did not expect.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, it's weird that he's still. It seems like he's been around forever. He's still only 24. It's just because he first got on the radar, when he was 19, and he's had a couple of odd surgeries. Had to have some eye surgeries, but has been healthy for a couple seasons now. Classic Dodgers of pitch relief start, and like you mentioned, this it, we've been waiting for since this is a former top three starting pitcher prospect, and he's been one of those guys like the stuff has always been better than what the strikeout rate actually was in the minors and the majors, and he's been not like Musgrove because he's a highly touted prospect, but we've been waiting for you've been hearing analysts say for quite a while, like it's coming, like he's got the stuff to support a big strikeout rate, and we've just never seen it. And now it's you know it's 26% now as a starter. It was 26% in 2019, but that was a lot of relief innings too. And the changeup is a big reason why. He's also kind of taken he's kind of melded his he has a really really nice curveball. He's always had a really nice curveball, but it's changed its shape the past couple of years, getting kind of slurvier, and it was even more of a conscious decision, something he did last year, to kind of meld those pitches into one, and he can locate them differently. But the movement is, he went from a real sharp dropping curveball to more of that slurve action, and it's been working. Like I watched his start against Seattle yesterday on Tuesday. He had 11K, career high 11K, and just the Mariners had nothing for him. All the pitches were working, and that's the thing about him. He's always had a fair amount of pitches. That's why the upside's always been high on him. Is like he's got swing and miss. He's got multiple swing and miss pitches that he can control, and it's just a matter of, like, maybe this is just a 24-year-old that is putting it together. Like I said, it seems weird that he's still that young. I think that's kind of why we still kind of want to poo-poo him, because like, oh, he's been around forever. He's never broken through, but he's still just 24. And sometimes it takes it's really hard to be a really great major league pitcher, pre-25. So I think this is probably just Julio Urias's coming out party, and that's what we're going to keep seeing.
Yeah, and I'm glad, I do have exposure to him on several teams because I kept feeling like he was too low in terms of his ADP. A lot of times, like well outside the top 100 overall. I'm like, why aren't we a little higher on him? Like, I get maybe he wasn't going to take a huge step forward, um, but he could because, like you said, we know where he was ranked. Before he really broke into the majors. I feel like it's almost a lesser version of like the Vlad Guerrero thing, where it's like, okay, he's not the shiny new prospect anymore. So let's just kind of forget about him and look
Yeah.
for something shinier. And then, oh yeah, guess what? He's still only 23, and in this case 24. It's like, sometimes it takes more than a year. It's not every rookie just immediately comes in and dominates. So yeah, Urias, I'm definitely a believer in him. Okay, that's three up. It's time for three down. So Nick, let's start with this one. It might be a little painful, but let's just rip the band-aid off because you're a big Kenta Maeda fan, and we did talk about him in the preseason quite a bit. One of your must-haves, I believe. Now it is early, so that's what you keep telling yourself anytime a guy gets lit up, and you can use that for another, I don't know, a few weeks.
Yeah,
But
please.
Maeda's, his last start today just it didn't go too well. Gave up a couple of long balls. So, what is going on with him? Your ace of aces that isn't acing so far.
Yeah, he has not been fantastic. The strikeouts have still been, like, he hasn't. I mean, today was the only, like, bad start. He gave up what, like six or seven earned runs, three home runs against the A's. I know he gave up. I think he gave up two to Matt Olson. Forget who the third one was to. But even before then, he hadn't been bad. Looking at his game logs, it's like one run in four innings, two runs in six innings, one run in four innings. But four inning starts are generally not what you're looking for with a top 50 pitcher. So there's that. Going into the disaster today, he had a 3 ERA. He was striking out 9.8 batters per nine. So it's not awful, but then he gets blown up tonight today, and you hate to see that. I'm not, like, this is one of those things that I'm not overly concerned. Like, I think Maeda is really really good, and so I'm not overly concerned. We looking at the, as far as like pitch that has done pretty poorly for him is his changeup. He he's got a nasty changeup. Like, he threw it 30% of the time last year. It had a 26.5% swinging strike rate on it, a 31.7% CSW. Like his changeup is filthy, and it's been getting hit this year. It had a minus 2.4 run value last year per 100 pitches. It's got a 3.8 run value this year. So, a swing of over 6 runs. And it's not generating the extreme swing and misses that it has in the past. He, you know, 31% swing strike last year. It was 27% the year before that, 31% the year before that. It's always been above 25%. And this year it is at 15.1%. So that is like, I gotta imagine that one's gonna get worked out. Like I don't think suddenly the league has figured out Kenta Maeda's changeup. So like once he gets that, that's one of those things. It's like changeup's kind of got a feel to it, and I think this may just be a case of some April shenanigans on his best pitch.
Yeah, I could just be a case of Oakland just, tearing through the league at this point. I mean, they're kind of ripping everybody up,
Yeah,
and I could just be running into a buzzsaw. And yeah, this case, like you said, he wasn't getting lit up on the regular before today, so it's too early to push the panic button. He's never been a guy who really has multiple meltdowns. So yeah, it's just like with Giolito. We're not even
yeah,
going to talk about him because it was one start. He was pretty dominant before that start, and he just didn't want to pitch early in the morning. Plus, Tony La Russa. So I mean, I think he's going to be to blame
yeah.
for everything.
Looking at just looking here at Maeda's like, there this is not pay too much attention to results. Like looking at the actual pitch, like velocity is the same, spin is the same as it's ever been. His vertical break exactly the same as it's been in the past. His horizontal break is exactly the same as it's been in the past. Like this is the same pitch as it's been before. It's not performing as well than it has in the past through the first couple starts. So I imagine that it will like I said, it's not like the league suddenly figured out his changeup after not being able to figure it out for 4 or 5 years. So I expect a swift bounce back once he's not facing the Homer happy A's.
There you go. So definitely hold tight. Don't worry about Maeda. Now you might want to worry about Kyle Hendricks because he just does not look like himself. I mean, I think there's an imposter in there because this is completely un-Hendricks like so far. We don't really care about the strikeout numbers because you're not going to get too much out of him. That's not why you get him. You get him for some nice, cheap, some good value, really. Kind of like you said, Maeda was a nice fallback SP1 early in the draft. Hendricks was a lot of people's kind of fallback SP2, right? You don't have to pull the trigger too early. But he is not doing Kyle Hendricks things. I think the number that really stands out is 11.3% walk rate. Okay, last year it was 2.5%. 2%. Year
Yeah.
before that, 4.4. Year before that, 5.4. Never had a walk rate above 7%. Always below league average. So he's walking guys and, of course, still not striking out more. And so, what is going on with Kyle Hendricks? Do you think that, I don't know. Well, I can't say anybody's figured out anything. I mean, we already know what he is at this point, right? He's a guy who does throw the fastball quite a bit, 60% of the time. It's not like it's got blazing heat on it, but that particular pitch has got a really low run value.
Yeah, you're not drafting Kyle Hendricks for strikeouts like you said, but you're also not drafting him for what is his ERA right now? A 6.92 ERA, 8.07 FIP. Not great at all. And the fastball doesn't have blazing speed, but it's still something that he's been able to limit damage with, and at least get some swinging strikes. Looking at his swing rates on his four seamer, you don't expect him to be a strikeout pitcher, but In 2019, his four seam had a 12.3% swinging strike. It had a 10.3% swinging strike last year. It has a 0% swinging strike last year. Like no one has whiffed on his four seamer yet. That's not great. Consequently, he's still getting the called strikes with it because his CSW has dropped from 33% to 20%, but that's all wrapped up pretty much in the swinging strike. Like his called strike is staying the same. I hope that he is. I've looked a lot at Kyle Hendricks because I have a decent amount of Kyle Hendricks because I went pretty in a lot of my drafts. I went pretty hitter heavy, and Kyle Hendricks was like my backup like 1/2, even though I knew he wasn't a one, but just kind of the strategy I was playing. And he, I looking at like the pitch shapes, like they're not drastically different, but part of it's just control, and that's kind of what makes me most optimistic for it. Is man, like Kyle Hendricks didn't suddenly turn into a 10% walk rate guy. Like he's always had elite control. I don't expect the 2.5% from last year, but I I think around 5% is pretty reasonable. Like that's so once that walk rate comes back down, I expect that's going to make things better. But man, I don't know. I've watched his starts, and it just doesn't seem like he's fooling people as much with his like crafty Kyle Hendricks cheese. So I'm holding my breath and hoping that he turns this right back around and gets back to his no walking ways and weak contact and just like Kyle Hendricks voodoo.
Yeah, you and everybody else who has him on any roster, because if not, then it's going to be a long season. But that's the thing. Looking at especially that fastball, like what has changed? Nothing really. I mean, the spin rate is almost identical. The movement, he didn't not like he had massive movement on it anyways in the first place. It's pretty much the same. The velocity is pretty much the same. There's not like any big red flag. It's just I guess with a guy like him, if you don't have the stuff, you really have to have that pinpoint control, right? He really has to spot his pitches, locate them perfectly, and he's just not. Let's just I guess chalk it up to being April. I don't know, but
Yeah, fingers
um,
crossed.
and I think this last one we've already talked about, but we have to continue to talk about Luis Castillo. There could be signs for better things ahead, but I think maybe let's just blame the weather on this one because he says he doesn't like the cold, and I get that, right? I get that totally, being from tropical weather myself. So is that it? Is it just, hey, it's early and I really don't want to be out here every single day in the Cincinnati? What is Castillo's deal? And do you think that at least his last non-disastrous start is a good omen?
Yeah, I hope it is. Yeah, I say the last start was a lot. That was nice to see. Like, even though it was 4 innings, like he didn't give up any home runs, so that was nice after giving up two the previous game. Yeah, I once again, hopefully, we can just believe him, and it's just cold weather because he has been kind of bad, even with his, one earned run in his last time out. He still has an ERA over 6. So, obviously not great, and his Ks are way down. And God, yeah, they're actually more down than I thought they were. 18% K rate, and he's been at 30% for the past 2 years. So pretty much disappointing all around for Luis Castillo. And the pits will look at in particular his sinker that it's not his, his best pitch is his changeup, but changeup effectiveness is a lot of times relies on how good your fastballs are, and the fastball has just been the sinker has been brutally bad. It's he used it 25% of the time last year. down to 17% this year. Given the performance, it probably should be like 0%. It among qualified pitchers, no pitch has gotten worse from last year than Luis Castillo's sinker this year. It had a -1 run value in 2020, so just a little better than average pitch. This year it has a 19.2 run value. So a swing of 20 runs. It's the biggest change. It's the just qualified pitches. It's got the highest run value, period. So, making arguably the league's worst pitch is Luis Castillo's sinker that he's throwing, that he threw a quarter of the time last year and 18% of this time this year. So that I don't care how good the changeup is, like that's got to get better. So hopefully it's just an April cold weather thing and things turn around for him. I don't have a lot of exposure to Castillo, so I'll probably get over it regardless. But people were very high. Another like kind of in the same vein as Maeda. A lot of people felt that he was like a shadow number one that you could get around pick 50. So we'll see if warm weather does him a little good and if he can build off this last start.
Yeah, and I felt that way too. I honestly thought, well, he's a guy who could be a top 5 pitcher, but was being drafted, more toward the end of a top 10, and so if he fell to like third round or whatever, I would grab him. I guess just good luck. It wound up that I didn't have him a lot. I think I have him in like maybe one league, so I'm not too worried personally. But yeah, I'm not actually worried unless there's something going on, health wise that we don't know about, which doesn't seem to be the case. I mean, there's no reason he shouldn't turn it around. Are you optimistic enough, well, for him or for any of these guys, to call him like a buy low, or would you start throwing out trade offers for Castillo for someone who's disgruntled?
Castillo, probably not as like, I don't think Maeda is a buy low, but if it's a choice between those two, like I'd rather try and get Maeda, but I think Castillo is a reasonable buy low, at least more so than Hendricks. Like Hendricks, like it pains me to say because this is like the first year I've actually bought into Kyle Hendricks, and I have him more than like sporadically, and so it really pains me. But I would much rather take a shot with Castillo than Hendricks because with Castillo, like you're taking a shot on upside of like good ratios obviously, but a big time K rate. And with Hendricks, it's we've talked about a lot before. It's like if you don't have a big K rate, you're really walking a fine line on value. So it's like if you want to buy, he would need to be really low for me to buy low on Hendricks just because of even when he turns things around, like things, or should I say, if he turns things around, he's still got that like fine line of he needs to be really sharp in the ratios in order to make up for that, 20 something percent K rate.
Exactly, because I mean that's it. That's what he's giving you, and it's not like he's going to deliver a lot of wins this year either, being on the Cubs. So, yeah, I agree with that. All right, guys, 3 up, 3 down. That's our pitcher analysis for this week. We'll be back, of course, next week with more deep down dives into StatCast metrics. Here to break it down for you and try to tell you what's what. And, of course, check out our hitter version on this fine channel as well. Thanks for watching.